The sky was burning. Commander Tae-hyun stood on the observation deck and watched as another transport ship exploded in orbit. The fireball spread across the darkness like blood and water. He did not look away. He had learned long ago that commanders who closed their eyes to death made poor decisions. Behind him, the tactical room buzzed with quiet desperation. Officers spoke in hushed voices, updating casualty numbers and calculating how many hours they had left. The answer was always the same: not enough. The Karveth Dominion had come to humanity's last fortress world 3 days ago. Their fleet covered the sky like a metal storm. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They surrounded the planet in a perfect siege formation. Nothing could get in. Nothing could get out. Tae-hyun had fought the Karveth for 7 years. He knew their tactics better than most. They did not rush. They did not make mistakes. They simply waited and crushed anyone who tried to break their lines. Humanity had lost 12 colonies this way. Now only Earth remained. A young officer approached him. Her name was Hye-won, and she had been promoted 3 times in the last month because everyone above her kept dying. She carried a data pad with shaking hands. "Sir, the supply depot in Sector 7 is gone. Direct hit from orbit." Tae-hyun nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Karveth were precise. They destroyed military targets first, then infrastructure, then hope. "How long can we hold?" he asked. Hye-won hesitated. She was too honest to lie well. 4 days. Maybe 5 if we ration everything. And our fleet? 32 ships left. Most are damaged. She paused. "Sir, we cannot win this." Tae-hyun turned to face her. She was barely 25 years old. Too young for this war. Too young to die knowing humanity's last world would fall. "I know," he said simply. The tactical room went quiet. Everyone had heard him. Some looked relieved that he had spoken the truth. Others looked betrayed, as if hope was the only thing keeping them alive. A voice broke the silence. "Then let me try." Tae-hyun turned. A pilot stood in the doorway. Lieutenant Ji-woo. He knew her reputation. She had flown more combat missions than anyone in the fleet. She was reckless, brilliant, and somehow still alive when better pilots had died around her. She walked forward with steady steps. There was something different about her today. She carried a long cloth bundle across her back. Tae-hyun recognized the shape: a blade, an old-fashioned sword wrapped in faded silk. "Try what exactly?" Tae-hyun asked. Ji-woo stopped in front of the tactical display. The hologram showed the Karveth fleet in red, Earth in blue, and the thin line of human ships that stood between them. It looked like a joke, a few sparks trying to hold back a forest fire. "I want to board their flagship," Ji-woo said. The room erupted. Officers shouted over each other. Impossible, suicide, madness. Hye-won actually laughed, though it sounded more like a sob. Tae-hyun raised his hand. "The noise stopped. Explain," he said. Ji-woo touched the hologram. The image zoomed in on the center of the Karveth formation. A massive ship sat there, 5 times the size of anything else. The command vessel, Admiral Vektar's flagship. "Their fleet is strong because it is coordinated," Ji-woo said. "Every ship follows orders from that flagship. If we destroy the command center, the formation breaks. Even for a few minutes, that would be enough." "We have tried missile strikes," Tae-hyun said. "Bomber runs, suicide attacks. Nothing gets through their defenses." "Because we attacked like an army," Ji-woo replied. "I will go alone. 1 small fighter. I have a cloaking device, stolen from a Karveth scout ship 2 years ago. Our engineers made it work." Tae-hyun studied her face. She was serious. Completely terrifyingly serious. "Even if you reach the flagship," he said slowly, "how do you plan to destroy it?" "1 fighter cannot carry enough explosives," Ji-woo smiled. It was not a happy smile. "I do not plan to destroy it from the outside," she said. "I bored through their maintenance shafts. Get inside. Find the reactor core or the command center. Then I make them stop the siege." "Make them?" Hye-won said. "You mean negotiate?" "The Karveth do not negotiate with humans." "Everyone negotiates when they have a knife to their throat," Ji-woo said. She unwrapped the bundle on her back. The sword inside was beautiful. Old steel folded 1,000 times with an edge that caught the light like frozen lightning. Symbols were carved into the blade. Tae-hyun could not read them, but he understood their meaning. This was a family weapon, something passed down through generations. "My grandfather carried this blade in the border wars," Ji-woo said quietly. "He told me that some fights cannot be won with missiles and ships. Sometimes you need to stand close enough to see your enemy's eyes. Taehyun wanted to say no, wanted to tell her this was suicide dressed up as strategy. But he looked at the tactical display again, looked at the 4 days they had left, looked at the 32 broken ships that were supposed to save humanity. What do you need? He asked. Jiwoo's smile became real. A fast fighter, full fuel. And for you to trust me. That is all? That is everything. 2 hours later, Jiwoo stood in the launch bay. Her fighter was the smallest ship in the fleet, designed for speed, not combat. The cloaking device was attached to its hull like a tumor, all exposed wires and jury-rigged connections. Engineers had sworn it would work. Probably, maybe. Taehyun watched from the control tower as Jiwoo climbed into the cockpit. She secured her grandfather's blade beside the pilot seat. The sword looked out of place among the computers and targeting systems. But then again, so did hope. The launch bay doors opened. Beyond them was nothing but death and fire. The Karveth fleet waited in the darkness like patient predators. Final clearance, Lieutenant, Taehyun said over the comm system. You can still abort? Jiwoo's voice came back steady and clear. Respectfully, sir, go to hell. He almost smiled. Good luck, he said. I do not need luck, Jiwoo replied. Just a sharp blade and a clear path. Her fighter launched. It shot through the battle debris at full speed, weaving between burning wrecks and enemy patrol routes. The cloaking device activated with a shimmer of distorted light. Then she was gone. Taehyun stared at the empty space where she had disappeared. Haewon stood beside him, watching the tactical display with wide eyes. Do you think she can do it? Haewon whispered. Taehyun thought about the blade Jiwoo carried, thought about the way she had smiled when she said some fights needed to be close, thought about how humanity had survived this long by being too stubborn to die quietly. I think, he said slowly, that the Karveth are about to learn something new about us. In the darkness between stars, Jiwoo flew toward the enemy fleet. Her hands were steady on the controls. Her grandfather's blade rested beside her, waiting, and somewhere in the distance the flagship sat like a mountain made of metal and arrogance. She was coming for it. The space between the human fleet and the Karveth armada was not empty. It was filled with death waiting to happen. Debris from destroyed ships tumbled slowly through the void. Patrol fighters circled in precise patterns. Sensor arrays swept the darkness for any sign of movement. And through all of it, Jiwoo flew. Her cloaking device bent light around her fighter like water flowing around a stone. It was not perfect. A careful observer might notice a shimmer, a slight distortion in the stars. But the Karveth were not looking for one small ship. They were watching for fleets. For attacks that made sense, Jiwoo did not make sense. That was her advantage. She kept her speed low. Fast movement created heat, and heat showed up on sensors even through cloaking. Her fighter drifted more than flew, using the momentum from her launch to carry her forward. Every few minutes she fired tiny bursts from her thrusters to adjust course. Each time she did, she held her breath, waiting for alarms to sound across the enemy fleet. Nothing happened. She remained invisible. The first patrol grid appeared on her display, 6 Karveth fighters flying in a hexagonal pattern. They moved with mechanical precision, their paths timed to leave no gaps. Any ship trying to pass through would be spotted instantly. Jiwoo studied the pattern. She had exactly 14 seconds to slip through when 2 fighters crossed paths on the far side. 14 seconds to cover 300 meters without being seen. She waited, counted heartbeats, watched the patrol routes overlap. Now, her thrusters fired. The fighter shot forward, silent in the vacuum. The patrol ships passed above and below her, so close she could see the alien symbols painted on their hulls. Then she was through, coasting into the shadow of a destroyed frigate. She allowed herself one breath, one moment to feel her hands shaking on the controls. Then she moved on. The debris field was worse than she expected. Entire ships had been torn apart, their pieces spreading across space like shrapnel from a grenade. Jiwoo recognized some of them. Human vessels she had served alongside, the carrier Indomitable, the destroyer Morning Star, ships full of people who had died thinking they could win. She pushed the thoughts away. Dead people could not be saved. Living people still could. Her fighter wove between the wreckage. Twice she had to kill her engines completely and let momentum carry her past Karveth salvage drones. The machines were harvesting metal from the destroyed ships, breaking them down into raw materials. Efficient, practical. The Karveth wasted nothing. The main fleet loomed ahead. Up close, the ships were even more terrifying. Each one was a fortress that could level a city. Their hulls were covered in weapon batteries and armor plating, thick enough to stop any missile humanity could build. And there were hundreds of them, arrayed in perfect formation around the flagship at the center. The flagship itself was monstrous. It stretched across space like a floating city, all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Gunports lined its surface like the scales on a dragon. Fighter bays opened and closed, launching patrols and retrieving them with mechanical rhythm. And at its heart, buried deep inside layers of armor and shields, was the command center where Admiral Vektar controlled the siege. Ji-Woo needed to get inside that ship. The question was how. She circled at maximum sensor range, studying the flagship's structure. Her computer analyzed every detail, looking for weaknesses. Airlocks were too heavily guarded. Fighter bays had force fields and security checkpoints. The main hangar was essentially a kill box designed to destroy anything unauthorized. But every ship needed maintenance. Every fortress had a back door. She found it on the lower hull, a cluster of small ports used for repair drones. They were barely large enough for her fighter, but they led directly into the ship's maintenance passages. The computer flagged them as dangerous. High radiation inside, automated defense systems, narrow corridors that could trap her. Ji-Woo smiled. Dangerous was better than impossible. She angled her fighter toward the maintenance ports. The approach was delicate. Too fast and she would crash. Too slow and she would drift off course. The cloaking device flickered twice, draining power to keep her hidden. Warning lights blinked on her console. Fuel at 30%. Life support running hot. Systems overloading. She ignored them all. Her fighter's hull scraped against the flagship's armor with a sound she felt more than heard. Metal grinding on metal. The noise would not carry through vacuum, but it vibrated through her ship's frame, through her seat into her bones. She adjusted angle, fired a thruster for half a second, and slipped into the maintenance shaft. Darkness swallowed her. The shaft was exactly as wide as her fighter's wingspan. Pipes and cables lined the walls, carrying power and fluids through the ship's guts. Her instruments went crazy, overwhelmed by electromagnetic interference and radiation. She switched to manual controls, flying by instinct and the faint glow of emergency lighting. The shaft split into 3 paths. Ji-Woo chose the middle one. It angled upward, toward the ship's central axis where the command center would be. Her fighter barely fit. Once she had to tilt 90 degrees to squeeze through a junction where support beams crossed the passage. An automated defense turret emerged from the wall ahead. Its targeting laser swept across her cockpit. Ji-Woo's heart stopped. The cloaking device was useless at this range. The turret had seen her. She slammed the controls forward. The fighter accelerated straight at the turret. Its weapon charged, preparing to fire. 3 seconds until it could shoot. 2 seconds. Ji-Woo twisted the fighter sideways. Her wing clipped the turret, shearing it off the wall in a shower of sparks. The gun fired as it broke, its shot going wide, burning a hole through the shaft's ceiling. Alarms started wailing somewhere in the distance. No time for stealth anymore. They knew she was here. Ji-Woo pushed her engines to maximum. The fighter screamed through the maintenance passages, taking corners that should have been impossible. Her training took over. Years of flying through asteroid fields and dogfights compressed into pure instinct. She did not think about the next turn. She simply made it. More turrets appeared. She shot them with her fighter's guns, the sound like thunder in the confined space. Blast doors tried to seal the passages ahead. She fired missiles at them, blowing them apart before they could close. The shaft filled with smoke and debris, but she flew through it blind, trusting her instruments and her gut. The passage opened suddenly into a larger space. A maintenance hangar. Ji-Woo's fighter shot out of the shaft and into open air, or what passed for it inside a ship. The hangar was full of repair equipment and drones, all of which turned their sensors toward her in confusion. Karveth soldiers appeared from doorways around the hangar. They were massive creatures, 8 feet tall, with armor that made them look even larger. They carried weapons designed to punch through starship hulls, and they all pointed those weapons at Ji-Woo's fighter. She did not slow down. Her fighter blazed across the hangar at full speed. Weapons fire tore through the air around her, missing by inches. She targeted the far wall and fired everything she had left. Missiles and bullets slammed into the metal, blowing a hole large enough to fly through. The fighter shot through the gap and into a corridor beyond. Karveth warriors threw themselves aside as she passed, her ship's heat scorching their armor. She was flying inside a warship, inside the enemy's fortress. It was completely insane. It was working. Ji-woo found a storage bay and forced her fighter through its doors. The ship would not fit through the passages ahead. This was as far as it could take her. She shut down the engines and grabbed her grandfather's blade from beside the seat. The metal felt solid and real in a way nothing else did. She opened the cockpit and jumped out. Gravity pulled at her, artificial and too strong. The Carveth liked heavy gravity. It made them stronger. Ji-woo stumbled for a moment, adjusting, then found her balance. Alarms echoed through the ship. She could hear boots running in the distance. Lots of boots. An entire army would be coming for her. Good. Let them come. Ji-woo ran toward the sounds of the alarms, toward the heart of the ship, toward the command center where an admiral thought he was safe. Her blade was sheathed across her back, waiting. And in her mind, she heard her grandfather's voice from years ago. A blade is only as strong as the person who carries it, but sometimes that is enough. She was about to find out. The corridors of the flagship were built for giants. The ceiling stretched 3 stories high. The doorways could fit vehicles through them. Everything about the ship screamed power and dominance. The Carveth did not build things small. They built monuments to their strength. Ji-woo ran through these passages like a shadow. She kept to the walls, ducking behind support columns whenever she heard footsteps. Her small size, a disadvantage in direct combat, became an asset here. She could hide in spaces the Carveth could not see, move through gaps they could not fit. The ship's layout was logical. All military vessels followed similar designs. Power at the bottom, weapons along the sides, command at the top. She needed to go up. She found a maintenance shaft and climbed. Her arms burned. The heavy gravity made every movement harder, but she kept climbing hand over hand up through the levels of the ship. Behind her, alarms continued to wail. Soldiers searched the lower decks, not realizing their target had already moved past them. At the 4th level, Ji-woo emerged into a wider corridor. This area was different, cleaner. The walls were decorated with battle honors and captured enemy flags. She recognized a few. Human flags from colonies that no longer existed. She kept moving. A squad of Carveth soldiers rounded the corner ahead. 6 of them, fully armored, weapons ready. They saw her instantly. There was no cover. No way to hide. Ji-woo did not try. She ran toward them. The soldiers raised their weapons, shocked by the audacity. A single human charging at 6 warriors? Madness. They hesitated for half a second, trying to understand what they were seeing. Ji-woo used that half second. She drew her blade mid-stride, the steel singing as it left the sheath. The weapon felt alive in her hands, balanced and eager. She reached the first soldier and cut before he could fire. The blade found the weak point in his armor, the joint where neck met shoulder. He fell. The second soldier fired. Ji-woo was already moving, twisting aside. The shot scorched the wall behind her. She struck low, cutting through the soldier's knee joint. He collapsed and she was past him, blade dancing. The Carveth were stronger, tougher, better armored. But they were also slower. Their size made them powerful but predictable. Ji-woo had spent years fighting them. She knew exactly how they moved, where they would be before they got there. 3rd soldier, 4th, 5th. Her blade was a silver blur, finding gaps in armor, striking joints and weak points with surgical precision. The Carveth training emphasized power. Human training emphasized survival. And surviving against stronger opponents meant fighting smart, not fair. The 6th soldier managed to grab her. His massive hand closed around her arm like a vice. She felt bones creak under the pressure. He lifted his weapon, preparing to end this. Ji-woo drove her blade upward through the gap under his helmet. The soldier's grip loosened. She pulled free and kept running, not looking back at the bodies. Her arm throbbed where he had grabbed her, probably cracked. She would worry about it later. The command center was 2 levels above. She found a service elevator and forced it open. The shaft inside was dark and deep. She could take the elevator, but it would be too slow. Too obvious. Instead, she jumped onto the cables and climbed. Her injured arm screamed in protest. She climbed anyway. There was no other choice. Stop climbing and she failed. Fail and humanity died. So she climbed. At the top level, Ji-woo emerged into a corridor lined with guards. Dozens of them. Elite warriors in polished armor. They stood at attention outside massive doors. Doors that could only lead to one place. The command center. Jiwoo studied the guards. Too many to fight directly. Even with her blade and speed, she could not defeat 50 warriors. She needed a different approach. She noticed the ventilation grates above the corridor, large enough for maintenance workers, large enough for her. She climbed back into the elevator shaft and searched for access to the ventilation system. Found it on the side wall, a panel she could pry open with her blade. Behind it was darkness and the sound of rushing air. Jiwoo squeezed inside. The ventilation ducts were tight even for her. She crawled on her stomach, pulling herself forward with her good arm. The blade dragged behind her, scraping against metal. Dust filled her lungs. She tried not to cough. Sound carried in these passages. She followed the air currents. They all flowed toward the command center. Life support systems kept the most important areas well ventilated. She just had to follow the breeze. The duct opened into a grate overlooking the command center itself. Jiwoo pressed her eye to the slits and looked down. The room was vast. Command stations arranged in concentric circles, all facing a central platform. Tactical displays covered the walls, showing the siege in real time. Human ships burned on those screens. Earth hung vulnerable in the center, counting down its final hours. And on the central platform stood Admiral Vector himself. He was larger than his soldiers, his armor decorated with marks of rank and battle. Around him stood his senior officers, the best the Carveth had, the brilliant minds directing humanity's destruction. One officer stood out. He was smaller than the others, his armor simpler. But something about the way he studied the tactical displays suggested intelligence, careful calculation. While others barked orders, he watched and thought. Jiwoo listened to their conversation. The Carveth language was harsh, but she had learned it during her years fighting them. "The human fleet is broken," Vector said. His voice was deep and satisfied. "They have days left, perhaps hours. This siege has succeeded like all others. The humans continue to surprise us," the smaller officer said. His name was Ralvin, according to the others. A tactician. "They fight longer than they should. Sacrifice more than is logical. We should not underestimate them. They are animals with weapons," another officer said. "Nothing more. When this world falls, their species ends." Jiwoo's fingers tightened on her blade. She had heard enough. She kicked the grate. It flew off its mountings and crashed to the floor below. 50 heads turned upward in shock. Jiwoo dropped through the opening, falling 3 stories onto the command platform. She landed in a crouch, absorbing the impact through her legs. Pain shot through her injured arm. She ignored it. Her blade was already in her hand, edge gleaming under the command center lights. Vector stared at her. His officers reached for weapons. Guards around the room raised guns. For a moment, nobody moved. The shock was too complete. A human. Inside their fortress, impossible. Jiwoo straightened slowly. She was covered in dust and blood, her uniform torn. Her face set in absolute determination. She looked at each officer in turn, memorizing their faces. Then she moved, not toward them, toward Vector. She crossed the distance in 3 steps. Guards fired. Their shots hit nothing but air. She was already moving, already somewhere else. Ralvin shouted a warning. Too late. Jiwoo appeared behind Vector's command throne. Her blade pressed against his throat, the edge sharp enough to draw a thin line of blood. The entire command center froze. "Hello," Jiwoo said in perfect Carveth. "We need to talk." Vector laughed. The sound echoed through the silent room. "You are one human. In a room of 50 warriors, on a ship with 1,000 soldiers. What do you think you can accomplish?" Jiwoo pressed the blade closer. The Admiral's laughter stopped. "That depends," she said. "How much do you value your life?" Ralvin stepped forward carefully. His eyes studied her with the same calculating look he gave tactical displays. "You cannot fight your way out. You must know this." "I do not plan to fight," Jiwoo said. She reached into her pocket with her free hand and pulled out a small device. Dead man's switch. Her thumb rested on the trigger. "I plan to negotiate. What is that?" Ralvin asked. "A bomb," Jiwoo said simply. "Connected to your reactor core. If I release this switch, your flagship becomes a very brief sun, hot enough to destroy every ship within 3 kilometers. 40 vessels at least." Vector tried to move. The blade drew more blood. He went still. "You are bluffing," an officer said. "Humans would not sacrifice themselves." Jiwoo smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You have been fighting us for 7 years. You have seen us ram ships into yours when we run out of missiles, seen us hold positions that should have broken in minutes, seen us die for inches of worthless ground, and you think we will not sacrifice ourselves? The room was silent. Ralvin stared at her. His mind worked through possibilities and probabilities. Then he asked the question that would haunt Carveth strategists for generations. Can she be stopped? Jiwoo looked at him directly. She kissed the edge of her blade, tasting steel and her own blood where it had cut her lip. The gesture was deliberate, meaningful. She met Ralvin's eyes and spoke clearly. Try telling the wind to stop. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Like a promise. Like truth given form. Ralvin understood first. He saw it in her eyes. The absolute willingness to die. The complete lack of bluff. This human had not come here hoping to survive. She had come here to win, and if winning required her death, she would pay that price without hesitation. What do you want? He asked quietly. Jiwoo's smile became real. I want you to listen very carefully. The command center remained frozen in shocked silence. 50 warriors all ready to kill, all unable to act. One wrong move and their flagship would become a funeral pyre for 40 ships. Jiwoo held death in her hand and everyone in the room knew she would use it. You want to negotiate, Ralvin said carefully. So negotiate. Jiwoo kept her blade against Vektar's throat. The admiral's breath came fast and angry. He was not used to being threatened. Not used to being vulnerable. She could feel him calculating whether he could move fast enough to escape. She pressed the blade a fraction closer, reminding him he could not. I am going to send a transmission to my commander, Jiwoo said. Encrypted. You will not block it. You will not trace it. You will pretend you never heard it. What transmission? Ralvin asked. That is not your concern. Everything that happens on this ship is my concern. Ralvin's voice stayed calm, but his eyes never left the dead man's switch. You want us to allow communication with your fleet. Why? Jiwoo smiled. Because I am not here to destroy one ship. I am here to destroy your entire fleet. The officers stirred. Angry mutters filled the room. Vektar tried to speak, but Jiwoo's blade encouraged him to stay quiet. Impossible, an officer said. You are one human with a bomb. Even if you detonate it, you destroy 40 ships. We have hundreds. The siege continues. Does it? Jiwoo asked. Your formation is built around this flagship. All your ships cluster close for coordinated fire. 40 vessels includes 3 carriers, 7 dreadnoughts, and the entire command structure for your western flank. Remove those pieces and your perfect formation becomes scattered groups. Confused, vulnerable. Ralvin's eyes widened slightly. He understood. You are not planning to destroy the flagship, he said slowly. You are planning to create a gap. And your fleet will strike through that gap while we scramble to reorganize. Very good, Jiwoo said. Now you see why I need to send that transmission. My commander needs to know where to aim. You are giving away your plan. Another officer objected. We can adjust. Move ships. Close the gap before your fleet can exploit it. Can you? Jiwoo asked. How long does it take to move a dreadnought into new position? 15 minutes, 20? How long before your western flank realizes it has no command structure and panics? How long before the other admirals start fighting over who takes command? She was right. The Carveth fleet was powerful, but it was also rigid. Everything depended on clear chains of command and precise coordination. Disrupt that for even 10 minutes and the formation would collapse into chaos. You are betting everything on this working, Ralvin said. If your fleet does not respond fast enough, you die for nothing. If we shoot down your transmission, you die for nothing. If we simply wait you out until your arm gets tired, you die for nothing. I die, Jiwoo agreed. But I take 40 of your ships with me. And I hurt your fleet badly enough that Earth gets more time. Even one more day is worth it. Vektar finally spoke, his voice strained by the blade at his throat. You would truly die for one day? I would die for 1 hour, Jiwoo said. 1 minute. 1 second. Because every moment humanity survives is another chance to win. The room went quiet again. The Carveth officers exchanged glances. They had fought humans for years, but they had never truly understood them. Never grasped what drove humanity to fight so hard against impossible odds. Ralvin understood now. He saw it clearly. Humans did not fight because they thought they could win. They fought because surrender was not in their nature. They would burn down the universe before they stopped resisting. Let her send the transmission, Ralvin said. What? Vektar's voice came out as a strangled sound. You cannot be serious. I'm entirely serious, Relvin said. He gestured to a communications officer. Open a secure channel. Human encryption. Allow the transmission. The officer looked at Vectar for confirmation. The Admiral could not nod with a blade at his throat, but his eyes gave permission. The officer's hands moved over the controls. Channel open, the officer said. Jiwoo spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the command center. Taehyun, this is Jiwoo. I am inside the flagship. I am sending you coordinates. Strike formation broken arrow. You will have 17 minutes. Do not waste them. She pressed a button on her wrist computer. Data flowed through the Karveth communication systems, encrypted in codes that would take hours to break. By then it would not matter. Taehyun's voice came back immediately. Jiwoo, confirm your status. Status is complicated, she said. I have a blade to an admiral's throat and a bomb in my hand. The Karveth fleet is about to have a very bad day. Understood. There was something in Taehyun's voice. Pride maybe, or grief. We are moving into position. Give us time. I will give you 17 minutes, Jiwoo said. After that, things get loud. Jiwoo, Taehyun's voice softened. It has been an honor. Not yet, Jiwoo replied. I am not done making them regret this war. The transmission cut. Silence filled the command center again. Outside, through the massive viewports, the human fleet was moving. 32 broken ships dragging themselves into attack position. It looked pathetic. A last desperate strike that would accomplish nothing. Relvin knew better. He studied the tactical displays, watching the human ships maneuver. Watching his own fleet remain in perfect formation, all ships clustered close for maximum firepower. Too close. He had warned them about this. Had suggested they spread out. But Vectar insisted on the tight formation. It was traditional. It was how the Karveth always fought. Traditions could become weaknesses. You need to order the fleet to disperse, Relvin said to Vectar. Now, before the humans attack. I will order nothing while this creature threatens me, Vectar growled. Then you will die in 17 minutes, Relvin said flatly. We all will. She is bluffing. She will not detonate. You saw her eyes, Relvin said. Does she look like she is bluffing? Vectar met Jiwoo's gaze. He saw no fear there, no doubt, only determination and a willingness to pay any price. He had seen that look before. On human soldiers who charged fortified positions they could not possibly take. Humans who fought until their last breath and then kept fighting. The Karveth called it madness. Relvin was beginning to think it was something else. Something the Karveth had lost generations ago when they became too powerful to fear death. What do you really want? Vectar asked quietly. Truly, you want us to surrender? I want you to understand something, Jiwoo said. You think you are winning this war. You think conquering Earth is inevitable? But every time you destroy one of our colonies, we learn. Every time you kill us, we adapt. You are teaching us how to fight you, and humans are very good students. Pretty words, Vectar said. They do not change reality. Your species is dying. My species, Jiwoo said, has survived ice ages and plagues and 1,000 wars among ourselves. We have climbed from caves to stars.
And you think a siege will stop us?
She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only Vectar could hear. I am not here to win today's battle. I am here to show you that we will never stop. Never surrender? Never give up. Even if Earth falls, even if you kill every human in this system, somewhere else humans will remember. And they will come for you. Not next year, not next decade. But eventually, we will find you, and we will make you pay. Vectar felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear, not of death. Not of pain, but of something worse. The realization that this war might never end. That humanity might be the first enemy the Karveth could not simply crush and move on from. 14 minutes, Relvin announced, watching the tactical display. The human fleet is charging weapons. Time to choose, Admiral, Jiwoo said. You can order your fleet to scatter. Save most of your ships. Retreat and regroup, or you can maintain formation. And I will detonate this bomb and take 40 vessels with me. Either way, your perfect siege fails today. You are giving me a choice? Vectar asked. I am giving you a lesson, Jiwoo said. Humans do not fight fair. We fight to win. Remember that next time you think we are beaten. The seconds ticked past. 10, 20, 30. The entire command center held its breath. 13 minutes. Ralvin said. Vectar closed his eyes, made his decision. Order the fleet to disperse, he said quietly. Admiral, officers protested. We cannot retreat from humans. It is not retreat, Vectar said louder. It is tactical adjustment. Do it now. The communications officer sent the orders. Across the fleet, ships began breaking formation. The tight siege circle started to spread. Gaps appeared in the perfect pattern. 12 minutes, Ralvin said. The humans are accelerating. They see the gaps. Jiwoo watched the tactical display, watched her people charging toward the opening in the Karveth lines. 32 ships against hundreds. They would not win. Even with the gaps, even with the confusion, the Karveth fleet was still too powerful. But they did not need to win. They needed to survive, to buy time, to prove humanity could not be easily destroyed. 11 minutes, Ralvin said. Human torpedoes launching. Targeting the carriers, Jiwoo smiled. Taehyun had chosen well. Destroy the carriers and the Karveth lost fighter support, lost mobility. The siege would collapse not because humanity won, but because the Karveth could not maintain it. I am leaving now, Jiwoo said. You are going to let me. Why would we do that? Vector asked. Because I still have this bomb, Jiwoo said. And because I promised you 17 minutes. I keep my promises. Jiwoo ran through corridors that had become a war zone. Alarms screamed. Soldiers rushed in every direction. Some toward her, some toward battle stations, all confused by the chaos erupting around them. The Karveth fleet was dispersing. Human ships were attacking. And somewhere in the flagship, an intruder still moved freely. She did not try to hide anymore. Speed was more important than stealth. She ran at full sprint, her injured arm screaming protest, her lungs burning in the heavy gravity. Behind her, footsteps thundered. Ahead, more soldiers appeared to block her path. She did not slow down. Her blade cut through the first soldier's weapon as he tried to aim. The second learned to fear her speed. The third never saw her coming. She moved like water, flowing around their defenses, striking at weak points they did not know they had. The Karveth were trained for battlefield combat, for lines and formations and overwhelming force. Jiwoo had been trained to survive. Big difference. The flagship shuddered. A distant explosion rattled the walls. Human torpedoes had reached their targets. The carriers Ralvin had mentioned were dying. Jiwoo felt the timing in her bones. 9 minutes had passed. 8 left. She reached the storage bay where she had left her fighter. The doors were sealed. Heavy blast doors designed to contain fires and breaches. Locked from the outside, they expected her to be trapped. Jiwoo examined the door controls. Karveth security systems were good, but they assumed attackers would come from outside. From ships and missiles and conventional warfare. They did not expect someone to be inside with time to study the locks. She pulled a small device from her pocket. A decoder her engineers had built from captured Karveth technology. It plugged into the control panel and cycled through codes at impossible speeds. Numbers flashed. The lock resisted, then clicked open. The doors slid apart. Jiwoo ran through, expecting her fighter to be destroyed or seized. Instead, it sat exactly where she had left it, looking small and fragile in the massive bay. The Karveth had surrounded it with explosives and guards, planning to trap her when she returned. They had not planned for her to arrive when the ship was under attack. Half the guards were gone, rushing to battle stations. The rest were distracted, watching tactical displays that showed human ships tearing through the dispersing fleet. Jiwoo ran toward her fighter. A soldier finally noticed her and shouted. Others turned, weapons raised. She was 30 meters from her ship, too far to reach before they fired. The flagship shuddered again, harder this time. Something big had been hit. The lights flickered. Gravity stuttered, dropping to half strength for 3 seconds before stabilizing. Those 3 seconds were enough. Jiwoo jumped. In the reduced gravity, she flew across the storage bay like a bird, covering the distance in a single leap. She crashed into her fighter's cockpit, rolled inside, and slammed the canopy shut. Bullets pinged off the hull. She ignored them and fired the engines. The fighter lifted on a pillar of thrust. She did not aim for the doors. She aimed for the ceiling, the weakest part of any interior space. Her guns fired, blowing a hole through the bay's roof. Metal peeled back like paper. She shot through the gap and into the corridor above. 7 minutes. The flagship was a maze, but Jiwoo had studied its layout during her approach. She knew where the exterior hull was, knew the fastest path through the ship's interior. Her fighter screamed through passages too small for it, scraping walls, knocking aside equipment and soldiers. Completely reckless. Completely necessary. Blast doors tried to seal ahead of her. She shot them down. Turrets emerged from walls. She destroyed them or dodged them or simply crashed through them. The fighter's armor was scratched and dented and burning in places. It would not last much longer, it did not need to. She found the hangar bay. The main one where Carveth fighters launched. It was massive. Full of ships and personnel and organized chaos as pilots scrambled to respond to the human attack. Jiwoo's fighter burst into the bay at full speed, surprising everyone. She targeted the force field controls. The bay's entrance was protected by an energy barrier that kept the vacuum of space from rushing in. Destroying those controls would decompress the entire hangar. It would kill dozens of Carveth. Maybe hundreds. Jiwoo did not hesitate. She fired. The force field collapsed. Atmosphere exploded outward, dragging ships and people and equipment into space. The decompression was violent and immediate. Jiwoo's fighter was pulled along with the rush of air, tumbling end over end toward the stars. She fought the controls, trying to stabilize. The fighter spun wildly. Stars and ships and Earth's blue surface wheeled past her canopy in a blur. She fired thrusters, adjusted, fired again. Slowly, painfully, she regained control. 5 minutes. Free of the flagship, Jiwoo assessed the battle. The Carveth fleet had dispersed, but not completely. Dozens of ships still clustered around the flagship, maintaining some semblance of formation. But gaps had opened, wide spaces where the siege line had fractured. Through those gaps, human ships poured. They were battered and damaged, but they fought with desperate fury. Torpedoes and missiles streaked across space. Fighter squadrons clashed in wheeling dogfights. The perfect siege had become a chaotic brawl. Jiwoo's communications crackled. "Jiwoo, this is Taehyun. We need that explosion, now." "Negative," Jiwoo replied. "I am clear of the flagship. The bomb does not need to detonate. Jiwoo, we need the chaos. We need the carriers dead and the command structure disrupted. If you do not detonate, we cannot punch through." She looked at the dead man's switch still clutched in her hand. Looked at the flagship, massive and threatening. Looked at her fuel gauge, nearly empty, and her ship's damage indicators. Critical systems failing. She could escape, could try to reach the human fleet, could survive this, or she could finish what she started. "Understood," she said quietly. "Beginning attack run." "What?" "No, Jiwoo, you are clear. You survived. Come home." "Home is wherever we fight," Jiwoo said, "and I am not done fighting." She turned her fighter toward the flagship. The massive vessel loomed ahead, angry and wounded but still deadly. Weapon batteries tracked her approach. Fighters moved to intercept. They thought she was trying to escape. They did not realize she was attacking. 3 minutes. Jiwoo pushed her engines beyond their limits. The fighter accelerated, burning through the last of its fuel. She armed every remaining missile, everything she had left. One final strike. The Carveth realized her intent too late. Fighters scrambled to intercept. Weapons fired. Space filled with death aimed at her tiny ship. She flew through it all, dodging by instinct, her body moving before her mind could think. 2 minutes. She was close now. Close enough to see the flagship's scars from her earlier intrusion. Close enough to pick her target. The ship's command tower. The armored spire where Vectar and Ralvin stood watching the battle unfold. 1 minute. Jiwoo fired everything. Missiles streaked toward the command tower. The flagship's defenses intercepted most of them. But not all. 3 missiles penetrated the defense net and slammed into the tower's base. Armor cracked. Internal explosions blossomed. The tower listed, its support structures damaged, and Jiwoo flew into the chaos, her fighter trailing fire and smoke. She activated the dead man's switch. Not to release it, to activate it manually. The bomb exploded. The blast was precise, surgical. Not enough to destroy the flagship completely, but enough to cripple its reactor. Enough to create a chain reaction that would tear through the ship's power systems. Enough to make every nearby vessel think the flagship was about to explode and scatter in panic. The shockwave caught Jiwoo's fighter and threw it away like a leaf in a storm. Systems failed. Power died. She tumbled through space, unable to control the spin, barely conscious from the G-forces. Through blurring vision, she saw the Carveth fleet break, saw ships fleeing the flagship, abandoning formation, each captain thinking only of survival, saw the human fleet charge through the gaps, pursuing, harassing, turning the siege into a rout. They had done it. Humanity had won. not the war, but this battle. This day Jiwoo tried to transmit, to tell Taehyun she had succeeded, but her communications were dead. Everything was dead. The fighter was just a piece of debris now, tumbling through space, life support failing. She thought about her grandfather, about the blade that had served her so well. She had dropped it in the fighter when she jumped into the cockpit. It lay beside her now, gleaming in the dim emergency lighting. "I kept my promise, grandfather," she whispered. "I fought until the end." Her vision faded. The cold of space seeped through the damaged hull. She closed her eyes, ready for whatever came next. Then something grabbed her fighter, strong and sudden, metal screeching against metal. Jiwoo forced her eyes open and saw a human recovery ship. Its mechanical arms had caught her tumbling fighter and were pulling it toward a landing bay. Taehyun's voice crackled through what little remained of her communications. "We have you, Lieutenant." "Hold on. I thought I told you to come home," he said. Jiwoo laughed. It hurt, everything hurt, but she was alive. "I was busy," I noticed. There was a pause. "That was the craziest thing I have ever seen, and I have seen a lot of crazy things. Did we win?" "The Carveth fleet is retreating. They lost carriers, dreadnoughts, and their flags.